talk so much about them, let's listen to our beloved Marine Band for just a little while.
So we get another arrival here, folks, coming off the buses. These are the Biden and Harris families arriving here. Everybody getting ready to go to their seats out on the west front for today's 59th inaugural ceremonies. Gonna look a little bit different than previous years, but this part is the same. Busloads of folks coming up, everybody bundled up for the weather. But this part is the same. Busloads of folks coming up, everybody bundled up for the weather.
Not unfamiliar to President-elect Biden because as Vice President.
Yes, absolutely. Good point.
So, yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
think about this for a second. In terms of coming into a presidency, think of all the congressional experience he has in comparison to whatever.
Yeah, watching the Biden family coming in like this, you can see up underneath the porticos there. Watching the Biden family coming in like this, you can see all of the, you can see some Capitol Police officers there as well. You're absolutely right, Ron. This is an angle that nobody else has. We have cameras, I think close to 30 cameras around for this JSIC live stream today. They're in places that other networks don't necessarily have, or the networks don't necessarily have, the press pool.
Oh, look
like
at this. The
one.
East Vestibule. That looks like Senator Schumer's posture.
It sure
and behind
does.
him would be Senator Mitch McConnell. The East Vestibule. That looks like
We've got Steny Hoyer there with the reddish scarf with, I think, a navy blue jacket. So what we're looking at here, this is actually the east front door. So this is just behind those doors at the top of the stairs. So just to orient yourselves, folks, this is just outside the rotunda. It almost acts as a little kind of a vestibule to the rotunda. Behind the cameraman there in our frame, his back is into the entrance to the rotunda, the east side. Back on the east front, another arrival. We got a bus pulling up here.
I love those steps. Now that's the House
Those
side.
are the House steps there.
And for those that were looking at the top and said, what are those figures? That is called the apotheosis of democracy. It's a pediment. It was sculpted by Paul Bartlett from the state of Ohio.
The inside and outside of the building just adorned with sculpture, allegorical sculpture, a lot of it, representing not necessarily specific people, but representing ideas. Just like today is, as Chairman Blunt said, an assurance of our continued and unbroken commitment to continuity, stability, perseverance, democracy. The outside of the building, the architecture itself suggests permanence, stability.
Yes. Good observation. We should mention Chairman Blunt. This is his second opportunity to be chair of the Joint Inaugural Committee on inaugural ceremonies. And the last person to do that was Senator Wendell Ford from Kentucky.
All right. Yeah, the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, we all call it JSIC for short because acronyms are a big part of life here on Capitol Hill. And they are the official hosts of today's 59th inaugural ceremonies. Official host JSIC, and you're watching our live stream feed. We've got a view of the west front there, looking right at it from the center. You can see platform there. That draped doorway at the center is what we call the lower west terrace door on the west front of the Capitol. It's where we're going to be seeing people coming out later and taking their seats on the platform.
Now, to the right-hand side, as you're looking at this camera feed, to the right-hand side, the majority of the people towards the right and higher up would be the media. The sun has obviously an impact upon photography, so that's where they're placed.
Oh, yeah. On either side of this, sort of just out of view, there's another side. So you can see the bleachers type things that the spectators would sit on, but just out of view are the press scaffolds that they sit on. And you're right, the photographers are all over on the one side because the sun can ruin the camera angles if they're not.
Let's listen to our Marine Band. Let's listen to our Marine Band.
President. As you can see, folks, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris arriving there in the purple, arriving on the east front of the Capitol.
They are greeted by the Senate Sergeant of Arms, Jennifer Hemingway, and the Acting House Sergeant of Arms, Tim Blodgett.
And there is President-elect Biden there, just out of the car, moving toward Vice President-elect Harris. Got great weather for this, of course. There's Dr. Jill Biden there in, I would call that a teal.
Teal?
Teal or turquoise?
Who am I to?
Teal and turquoise?
Question.
Turquoise with teal trim.
Who am I to? Oh, there's, you can see Officer Eugene Goodman close by as well. The
United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman, today's acting Deputy Sergeant at Arms.
He's in the brown overcoat, yes.
In the brown coat and scarf there. So, folks, you may have seen United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman. You may have seen some footage of him. So he has the special honor today of being the Deputy Sergeant at Arms.
I see the chair of JASIC, Senator Roy Blunt, close by.
Yeah, so some of JASIC meets them here at the bottom of the East Front steps, and then I think they meet some of the others as they walk a little bit further up the steps there.
Again, this is not an unfamiliar scene.
Senator Klobuchar, I believe, there in the
Sure is.
brownish coat, tan coat. Senator Klobuchar, I believe, there in the. And here we go, starting the walk up the stairs, the East Front stairs. Now remember, folks, presidents used to be inaugurated right here on these East Front steps. Presidents were inaugurated here, basically starting with Andrew Jackson.
I think President Reagan got it right. The West Front is so much better, but it's historic to be on the side.
The move to the West Front in 1981 is one of those things where people think it's always been that way. Just like the Supreme Court getting their own building in 1935, we think it's always been that way. Here we go, going up the East Front steps. Let's see some United States Capitol Police officers flanking there. And approaching the east door. Beautiful carved bronze doors.
Tourists used to enter through here. The Speaker's office used to be in the lobby out to the left.
Yeah, this door is not used a lot, folks. I have to say, Ron and I and our colleagues in the visitor services and guide service, we are in the Capitol just about every day, and we don't see these doors open a whole lot.
Another name for them are the Randolph Rogers doors, cast in Munich by the Royal Bavarian Foundry, 10,000 pounds. And the panels tell the life of George Washington. Well, his history.
Little scenes,
and Columbus.
Scenes of them. Columbus and Washington, they go up the sides. Also, we got a view of the inside here. Folks coming out that east door.
Excellent footage.
There's President-elect Biden and Dr. Jill Biden. You can see we've got a nice sunny day. There's Vice President-elect Harris and Doug Emhoff.
Now, friends, I know what you're thinking.
And the JASIC behind them, Senator Blunt.
Where are they going? To a whole area.
And there's Speaker Pelosi coming through again. The color of the day, I think, turquoise. And Senator Mitch McConnell. And here we are looking at the Marine Band again. Like I said, they're going to be playing all day. And a little close-up of those uniforms, or a little bit of detail about those uniforms. As you know, they have the epaulettes, the braiding on the shoulders. But Ron, trivia question for you. Do you know what the braids in the front are? They sort of hang down. They almost look like a bolo tie, sort of.
I don't, and I should.
They're called eglets. Eglets. And you can see the ones on the officers are gold. And then the other folks in the band there, Marine Band, they have white epaulets and eglets. So they're sort of hang down in the front, little sort of tassely looking things.
Oh, look at the passion of the director. Let's listen together. Ladies and gentlemen, this is typical of inaugurations on the West Front. What are we doing? Waiting patiently.
I think that may be Representative Delorio there. Her green footwear just at the top of camera now, but she's usually got some distinctive hair color and clothes that we can spot her even with masks on. It's difficult sometimes to identify our members of Congress when everybody is masked up in this pandemic.
Now, Jen, people have watched for a couple hours now, and they might be wondering, well, wait a minute, I see marble that's different colors. You would be correct.
Oh, yeah.
Marble from Vermont, Maryland, and Massachusetts, specifically Lee, Massachusetts.
Yeah, and on the inside of the building we see a lot of sandstone and a little bit of concrete. These are concrete walls here inside what we sort of lovingly refer to during inaugurations as the chute, right? This is where people are going to be sort of slaloming out, if you will. The chute brings to mind kind of like a water park, right? But they're going to kind of come down from the rotunda and out those doors onto the platform on the west side. So the door just behind us in this shot.
This chute is at the bottom of the staircase, which connects to the crypt.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention toward the inaugural platform. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley. The Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark A. Milley.
General Milley coming out now, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Now again, on previous inaugurations, you would just see tens of thousands of people. You see, this is still quite a moment.
Yeah, this platform normally packed elbow to elbow. Folks in there, just like the early House and Senate chambers, actually. You know, National Statuary Hall members were crammed in there elbow to elbow until they expanded into the new House chamber in the 1860s.
I want our public, I want our audience to, maybe not now, but this afternoon, this evening, YouTube or Google inaugurations in the past, you will see people sprawled, not on the west side, but the east front, everywhere, hanging from the dome in places they shouldn't be. This is a most appropriate site.
Yes, famous photograph of Lincoln inaugural. It's just crammed with spectators. That is Steve Scalise there on the right, I believe.
It would be from Louisiana.
That is Steve Scalise there on the right, I believe.
He would be the minority whip.
Our Marine band playing. They've got, like I said, they've got a full day. They've got a full concert. It's one tune after another there. They've got, like I said, they've got a full We're going to be hearing from them some familiar tunes and some special selections. We're going to be hearing from them some familiar tunes. Marine band. They've also got what's called the blood stripe, I believe, down the side of the trouser leg, which is unique to their uniform. Okay, we're back to the chute. Which is unique to their uniform. Ron's leaning in close to identify who we're seeing on screen here. Ron's leaning in close to identify who we're seeing on screen here. Being shown their marks, how to come out. I think that might be Clyburn in the red hat.
From South Carolina, it is. From South Carolina, it is.
And everybody's got to know before they come out where they're going to on the platform. There's the signed seating. There's little signs on the chairs. We saw a little bit of that earlier.
Leadership of the United States House of Representatives, Republican Whip, the Honorable Stephen Scalise, and Majority Whip, the Honorable James E. Clyburn.
So for our younger students, when you hear the word whip, that's the person that assembles the votes. That person makes calls and addresses before a bill gets to the floor, so that they have a good idea whether it's going to go through or not.
The term comes to us, I think, from hunting. It refers to the whipper in, sort of rounds up and makes sure all the hunting animals are pursuing in the right direction. So it's a good metaphor for our whips in Congress to sort of round up everybody to vote. Got some more folks coming down from the crypt here.
From the state of Vermont. I saw Senator Thune in front.
Of the crypt here. Those columns that you see, the crypt of the Capitol, just underneath the dome. Those columns that you see, the crypt of the Capitol, just underneath the dome.
Janet, the act of secession is important, and this is going on with such good precision. As it
I mean, this is an event.
always has.
We've heard it now a couple of times from members of the JSIC, an event commonplace and miraculous, this peaceful transfer of power. And the fact that it's all orchestrated, coming off together. There's Senator Graham.
Lindsey Graham. I see Senator Dick Durbin, who I ran past by in the cleaners last week. It looked like Senator Cory Booker was in front of them as well.
Well, they're squinting at us, and we're squinting at them.
Senator Bernie Sanders.
Probably folks recognize Bernie Sanders from Vermont. Well dressed for potential bad weather.
Oh, he could be in a short sleeve shirt. I mean, he's used to this.
Really comfortable weather for today's inaugural compared to some years past.
Such as President George W. Bush. I can recall walking down the street, sliding on Constitution Avenue, just trying to get a glimpse. It was
1829, Andrew Jackson's inauguration. The weather was so bad they had to do it inside the House chamber. This tradition that we're observing today, of course, this tradition is older, far older than you or I or anybody else who's watching today. But this tradition has also evolved over time. It's changed, and things have changed about it. And so today's inaugural looks different than previous years.
Ladies and gentlemen,
there have been a lot of
leadership
differences.
of the United States Senate, President Pro Tempore Emeritus, the Honorable Patrick Leahy and Mrs. Marshall Leahy. Democratic Whip, the Honorable Dick Durbin and Mrs. Rima Doden. Majority Whip, the Honorable John Thune and Mrs. Kimberly Thune. Democratic Leader, the Honorable Charles Schumer and Mrs. Irish Wineshaw Schumer. And President Pro Tempore of the Senate, the Honorable Chuck Grassley and Mrs. Jennifer Hines. And President Pro Tempore of the Senate,
Senator Patrick Leahy has time for everyone. We see him on tour everywhere. His office is close by the rotunda. He'll greet everyone. He can give the tour. It's just amazing.
He has been a special guest on many of my tours.
Ladies and gentlemen, the members are so engaging with people. The late Congressman John Lewis, I can recall years ago, I waved him over. He says, "I'm going to vote and come back." And I said in my mind, "No way." It took 15 minutes, but he came back and spoke to those young people. Well, Mr. Vice President Pence, he used to stand up, when he was a member of Congress, he used to stand up on the benches in the rotunda and give tours. I recall that all the time. It looks like Kevin McCarthy from California.
I believe we'll be seeing the beginning of the JSIC leaders going out to the platform here. That might be Senator Schumer we're seeing from the back again there.
Who once was a chair of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies.
Got some more, I think, family members to seats here.
You have to notice this. The wind has slightly picked up.
Wind picking up a little bit. Yeah, it looks that way.
The wind has slightly picked up.
Wind picking up a little bit. Yeah, it looks that way.
I love this. The Constitution brings us here. It's really one sentence that is necessary. The oath. 37 words or 30.
You know, it
35
originally
minutes.
said, "I do solemnly swear or affirm I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States." And James Madison and George Mason insisted the chief executive should also swear an oath to the Constitution. And so Congress approved that version. So they added a little bit to that oath of office.
That's what brings us here, the Constitution. And this date is because of the 20th Amendment. This was mentioned in the video earlier. Senator George Norris from the state of Nebraska proposed this in 1925.
Yeah, again, in terms of those things, we think of them as always happening this way. We think inaugurations always in January, but until quite recently, they were happening at other times, including March. We saw earlier in response to our trivia question that George Washington was actually inaugurated April 30th, but a lot of the other ones, March 3rd or March 4th.
Or in some cases, if it's on a Sunday, March 5th.
Yes, and if inauguration falls on a Sunday, that's right, they do not have it on the Sunday. They do kind of a small swearing in and then the official ceremony the next day. Actually,
President Wilson, I believe, was inaugurated on a Sunday. That happened once. President Wilson. It looks like Senator Mendez from New Jersey there. Forgive us if we're hesitating. It's difficult to see sometimes with masks.
Also, the Capitol has been closed to tours out of an abundance of caution, of course, for some months now. And so, although these 535 members of Congress, senators are our bosses, I would say, we haven't seen them in a little while.
You know, it's fun, Janet. I've seen times where former members of Congress, they've just casually walked up towards the West Front, and they know they don't have a seat, but they kind of blend in. That's kind of fun.
I think we saw some former members arrive earlier. Here's former Vice President Dan Quayle, the Honorable Dan Quayle, about to step through the chute and out the door. And again, we've got camera angles here that folks that not a lot of other people do. And again, we've got camera angles here that folks that not a lot of other people do. Although there is a little zone set aside, so if anybody, there's a little moment off camera where they can straighten a tie or just do a quick check, every hair is in place. Of course, with the wind on the platform, there's only so much you can do, but at least when you step out.
Not the handshake, but the...
Yeah, we're seeing fist bumps here. Former VP Dan Quayle heading out there. We thought, I guess, that Mrs. Quayle, Marilyn Tucker Quayle, I believe, was going to be accompanying him, but heading out there. He is out there by himself today. We thought, I guess, that Mrs. Quayle, Marilyn Tucker Quayle, I believe, was going to be this. With so few chairs, people have to get up and move around, and they are able to move around. So I think we're seeing a little bit more socializing and photo taking, and of course, as we mentioned, not handshakes, but handshake equivalents, safe handshake equivalents.
To be clear, we miss the people.
Of course.
We miss the people. They belong here, and just this year.
Well, this is the people's house, and we were talking earlier, you and I, as tour guides, recalling how many times members of Congress appear during our tours. We'll be taking a group of public around through the rotunda or through the crypt or National Statuary Hall, which is the former House chamber. And, there is no separate space, right? If a member needs to get from one side of the building to the other, they go right through those spaces. And very often, it's fun to point out. People will recognize their own member from their district. They may be visiting us from far, far away, and they'll recognize the member from their district passing through.
Looks like Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan. You mentioned about the People's House. Inaugurations take place here, not the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's a
White
really
House.
good point. Where inaugurations don't happen.
Right. They make the laws that protect us here. Elected officials here. Accountability, Congress. It's important.
Well, and this is a ceremony that's happening publicly, in full view, right?
Look at that entrance to the crypt. That was an excellent shot.
So in the crypt of the Capitol, you can see these, they're sandstone columns, they're Doric columns. They're among some of the oldest architectural features in the building. And they were originally all supposed to be painted white, and so you'll see a little bit of variation in the natural stone there.
Now, that star in the center is called the Compass Stone. Here comes Senator Clinton and former President William Jefferson Clinton.
They just stepped through the crypt of the Capitol, heading out now down into the chute, and we'll be seeing them on the platform really soon. Back Back on the platform here, you can see to the left the podium where the action's going to go down. And again, this is constructed. This is all kind of built onto the side of the Capitol. There's actually a section of railing, which is removable. It's a massive stone balustrade. It looks like you couldn't lift it for anything, but every 4 years, it's lifted out so that there's a pathway for folks to get out onto the west front here. But every 4 years, it's lifted out so that
We should also mention the mace is brought out here. That's the symbol of power and authority. You can make the argument that is the oldest relic in the Capitol, and it's brought out under the direction of the House Sergeant of Arms. Well, it is a joint meeting, joint session after all.
So many traditions, and we have more of those wonderful videos to show you all later on, highlighting some of these traditions that take place. This is an inside view. This is another angle I don't think anybody else's cameras have.
No, that was coming from the law library door.
Coming up from the law library door.
Yeah, that was renamed the law library in 1860.
And into the crypt.
Yes, the Supreme Court used to be in that area. They moved upstairs because the Senate moved into its new chamber. It's all about space.
We've seen some exterior
Ladies
views
and
of cars
gentlemen,
pulling
the
up.
42nd President of the United States, the Honorable William J. Clinton, and the Honorable Hillary Rodham Clinton of the United States.
Yes, every president that is in attendance and First Lady is announced.
And that's the Bushes coming through the crypt now. And down the other side of the crypt into the chute. They'll be on the platform soon, too, with the Clintons. The other side of the crypt into the chute. They'll be on the platform soon, too, with the Clintons.
You know, normally we would hear the roar of the crowd for every one announced, and it is noticeably different.
I mean, I've always staggers me to imagine how Reagan's second inaugural in '85, how they had to move it into the rotunda and try to stage
7 degrees.
this massive event inside. Because you mentioned earlier James Monroe's inauguration outside. The first one to be held outdoors, and the number of people attending just, astronomically more. All right, we've got the Obamas coming through, about to enter into the crypt there. Astronomically more. All right, we've got the Obamas.
Quite a presence that couple brings. I'm looking for his coat tomorrow.
Now that you've mentioned to me you've never seen him in a hat, I keep looking for hats.
He's been in a hat. It's just rare when he's in the Capitol building. He's been in a hat. It's just rare when he's in the Capitol building.
And all these folks we're seeing, this is their home.
Oh, very.
They have memories here going back years. Familiar faces around.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 43rd President of the United States, the Honorable George W. Bush and Mrs. Laura Bush. President of the United States,
The Bush is coming out of the chute and onto the platform. Oh, we got a scarf slip there. You're right, that wind is picking up.
The Bush legacy, formidable. There is a tree planted to President Bush on the House side of the Capitol. And the member's name is eluding me, Lamar Smith, who had it planted. Yes, I pass by it quite frequently.
Inaugurations almost like track the history of technology in this nation. Think about the early ones. There's no radio, no television. There's no amplification. A lot of people, I think, complained that they couldn't hear George Washington giving his speech. The first one to have amplification, 1921, Warren G. Harding. Oh, we have got the justices arriving
Executive
here.
branch.
You mean the judicial branch?
Excuse me, judicial branch. Excuse me.
There's the herald trumpets.
You mentioned inaugurations. How about President Lincoln? People were within 10 feet from him.
Oh, yeah.
Soldiers with weapons.
Those are called tabards, those things that hang on their trumpets there. They have two sets. They have a navy blue and a white. So those are the navy blue that you see there on the herald trumpets. U.S. Army herald. herald trumpets. So our justices in their robes coming down the chute. It's my understanding that they gather in the
Ladies
old
and
court
gentlemen,
chambers.
the 44th
Get the robes
President
on
of
and
the
kind of come all out
United States,
together.
the Honorable Barack H. Obama and Mrs. Michelle Obama.
Noticeable applause.
I hear the applause there. Very helpful to have announcers.
As a senator, I once shared the same elevator with him.
You know, I
that
got
for you?
here, I actually moved to Washington on Election Day, 2008. Came here to work at the Capitol just about a week later. And then, so my first big public event was actually President Obama's first inaugural, 2009. And my job for the day was actually to escort people to their spots, to their seats.
Oh, nice.
As we mentioned this year, you know, different seating than in years past. To their seats.
nice.
As we mentioned this year, you know, different seating than in years past.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Justice, the Honorable John G. Roberts Jr., and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court.
Justice Sotomayor will be doing the swearing-in to President-elect Biden's sons, and then, of course, Vice President-elect Harris, stepmother, to these two individuals here.
This is likely as much as we'll see of the children as coverage of young people. It's out of respect to the family. So
Being shown to their seats. They are young, 21 and 26. And Vice President-elect Harris has been their stepmother for a few years now. I think they were maybe teens.
this seems so strange that there's so few people there. But
it looks very different than inaugurations past. But this tradition is so long that although this looks different than the last one and the one before that, it may not look that different than the ones at the very beginning. You know, we talked about 1801 and people saying they couldn't spot Jefferson because he wasn't wearing any special sash or hat or anything. People saying they couldn't spot Jefferson because he wasn't wearing any special sash or hat or anything.
Coordination of spacing.
These are more family members here, I believe.
Spacing.
These are more family members here. These are the Biden's children here. So this is Biden family members. These are the Biden's children here. This is Biden.
I've toured President-elect Biden's brother.
You know, in addition to
Years ago.
you know, I think folks, when they think about visiting the Capitol, they think about sending their young students here on field trips from all over the nation, or think about coming in and looking at the artworks with us. But we do give tours sometimes to important guests and dignitaries.
Very fortunate.
Former President Clinton there, shown on the platform.
We're approaching the 11 o'clock hour, and in another hour, President Biden-elect, he'll be sworn in, and we'll hear his remarks in less than that time. So, President Biden-elect, yes, people have waited a long time, but the end is near. Yes, people have waited a long time, but the end is near.
All right, so the Biden grandchildren about to step into the chute and out onto the platform. Right, so the Biden grandchildren about to step into the chute. Robert Hunter Biden II, Ashley Blazer Biden, and the grandchildren of the president-elect there. Robert Hunter Biden II, Ashley Blazer Biden, and the grandchildren of the president-elect there. So folks have passed through the crypt and sort of out and down the other side. Down here toward the west front, they're about to step through the draped door that we've been looking at from the outside of the platform, kind of just beneath those flags. Draped door that we've been looking at from the outside of the platform, kind of just beneath those flags.
question one might
Ladies
ask.
and gentlemen, the children of President-elect Biden, Robert Hunter Biden II and Ashley Blazer Biden, also the grandchildren of the President-elect. And Ashley Blazer Biden, also.
Now, I just want to point out the Marine Band here is playing John Philip Sousa March, which is called Beau Ideal. As we see the Biden children and grandchildren headed out to the platform to take their seats.
This is the area of the Capitol Visitor Center.
Yeah, that's the area where the visitor center attaches to the old front of the Capitol. So if you look closely at the walls here, you can see sandstone from the 2000s attached to sandstone from the 1800s, and a little clear window in the floor. Coming through the crypt.
You know, with the approach of Vice President Pence, who's a pretty cool customer, if this isn't emotional, it will be when he leaves on the East Front. So it'd be interesting to see for him and his wife. Just their posture coming down, what the emotions might be. Has to be surreal.
Yes. And while all this is happening, the platform filling up with members, you know, the president-elect waiting somewhere inside the Capitol. If you can imagine folks being backstage before a big performance, the jitters, the butterflies, hoping you remember your lines, hoping you remember your marks, right, where you're supposed to stand. Hoping you remember your lines, hoping you remember your marks, right, where you're supposed to stand. And then we have these cameras and spots watching folks come down the steps. And then we have these cameras and spots watching folks come down the steps. Just behind those steps is actually the spot where they were meant to entomb George Washington. Just behind those steps is actually the spot where they were meant to entomb George Washington underneath the crypt of the Capitol. Vice President Pence here about to step out from the chute. Vice President Pence. We see the Obamas on the platform. Soon there'll be an announcement for everybody to be seated, but not yet.
We do have a ways to go. We have the national anthem to be rendered.
Yes. We have performances to watch. We have poems to hear. Yes. We have performances to watch. This program has expanded and contracted over the years, you know, according to the priorities of the day and according to the traditions, according to the conditions of the day. When they've had to cut things short for one reason or another, they probably, you know, left some things out, and other times people have thought, well, I've got this moment and I'm going to hear my favorite poet and I'm going to hear my favorite musician.
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the Vice President, the Secretary of the Senate, the Honorable Julie E. Adams, and Chief Administrative Officer of the House of Representatives, Catherine Spindor. Julie E. Adams, and Chief Administrative Officer of the House of Representatives, Catherine Spindor.
So we got the Secretary of the Senate, Chief Administrative Officer of the Senate there, accompanying Vice President Pence.
Ms. Adams was on the left-hand side.
And Karen Pence, his wife. Vice President Pence.
Ms. Adams was on the
Here with
left-hand
Vice
side.
President Pence, getting ready to come out of the chute. Here with Vice President Pence.
The Pences have visited my church. Yes. The Pences have visited.
Vice President Pence is, I think, probably the member of Congress, Senate, that visitors have spotted the most on my tours in the past couple of years.
He has time for people, doesn't he? When
He
comes to-
stops and shakes hands. I had whole school groups of 8th graders run over to meet the Vice President. And again, it's one of those moments folks can't believe they're having. Came on a tour of the Capitol and saw the Vice President. Oh, there they are, those tabards on the herald trumpets.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Michael R. Pence and Mrs. Karen Pence. The Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Michael R. Pence and Mrs. Karen Pence.
Quite a warm reception.
Marine Band playing Hail Columbia. sorry, I think this is another Sousa march. As the Pences step out onto the platform, headed to their seats.
Oh, riders for the flag, yes.
Step out onto the platform, headed to their seats.
Oh, riders for the flag, yes.
See some of the justices there in the same shot with Vice President Pence.
Familiar tune?
Same shot with Vice President Pence.
Familiar tune? You can hear the audience singing "This Is My Country." You can hear that.
I was reading about the Marine Band uniforms, and they have a slightly different uniform for the orchestra because those epaulets on the shoulder make it very hard for them to hold the violins and such. So it's an incredible thing to think about uniform design having to conform to what musicians need. It's an incredible thing to play their instruments. Vice President Pence there. We see there's Dan Quayle and George W. Bush there. There's Dan Quayle exchanging a greeting on the platform. There. Exchanging former presidents and former vice presidents and justices. You can see them all there. Presidents and former vice presidents. Justices, you can see them all there. And families. Family that we see here.
Did you notice those two strollers earlier out on the east front? I think.
I didn't see the strollers.
Yes, the two strollers.
Sure.
On the east front. I think we know who's in those strollers now.
I think we do. We have some small ones there.
We know who's in those strollers now.
I think we do. Some small ones there. I think maybe the only equivalent in most of our lives maybe is attending like a graduation ceremony for a family member, perhaps. And
Graduation, commencement, I would agree.
yeah, the idea of everyone, the time it takes for everyone to find their seats, and then for all the names to be announced, and then for everybody to depart. And you've got to dress for the duration, right?
Yes. We should mention to people there is a plan B if we don't have it on the west front outside, and a plan C.
Seating down here on the west front lawn. So members of Congress, some former members, other guests.
Some of our colleagues are working in that area.
Those mayors and governors that we saw earlier arriving, the diplomatic corps, all these folks have found seats. And of course, everything spread out due to the pandemic. You can see President-elect Biden there at the top corner of our screen. Lots of photos being taken. Some family members. I believe those are the Biden granddaughters there, the three ladies in sort of pastel color coats. There is a very interesting fashion strategy for the day. Folks seem to pick bright colors so they can be spotted among the sea of dark overcoats on the platform. But again, it's a little more spread out than normal, so it's a bit easier to pick out individuals. Another view of the Marine Band here.
You know, one thing we've noticed, no one has gone back into the entrance.
Coming out the west door.
Yes, once you're out.
Back in the west
once you're
door.
out, I think that's it.
Coming out the west
Yes,
door.
once you're out.
Back in the west
Once you're out, I think that's it. Oh. Coming down the east staircase.
An Albert Bierstadt painting there on the staircase there. Is VP-elect
That painting that people just saw used to be in the House of Representatives chamber.
And they're preparing preparing to walk across the crypt. So that escalator you can spot at the back of the shot, that's leading down into the Capitol Visitor Center, the newest part of the Capitol complex, opened up in 2008.
December 2nd. You remember that? Officer Goodman?
In the light brown coat.
Well, that's going to be quite a moment. Quite a moment.
I'm off here, preparing to cross the crypt. Here they go. You see those sandstone columns in the crypt. So again, in the pale light brown coat there, United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene Goodman. Light brown coat there, United States Capitol Police Officer Eugene.
Deputy
Sergeant at Arms.
Yes, for this ceremony.
Acting Deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms.
Excuse me.
Eugene Goodman. Eugene O. Goodman, Private First Class, United States Capitol Police.
Very soft-spoken gentleman. Says 4 words a week.
He's a familiar face to us and to our colleagues in the guide service. He's a familiar face to us. And he's a face that you all may have seen recently. And some photographs and video of the Capitol. We can hear the footsteps of VP-elect Harris coming down the stairs from the crypt. Officer Goodman, this is a walk he's made many a time, but never as part of the procession in quite this way.
Don't you feel like he's on duty. He's just...
You can see his eyes sort of going back and forth. Now, of course, he's seeing familiar faces all around him, but
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the Vice President-elect, the Chief of Inaugural Ceremonies, Maria Miller-Lohmeyer, the Acting Deputy House Sergeant-at-Arms, Kevin Grubbs, and the Acting Deputy Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, United States Capitol Police Officer, Private First Class, Eugene O. Goodman.
Well, crescendo of applause, and we know who that's for.
Yeah.
Officer Goodman. His actions more than heroic.
Oh, there we see Speaker Pelosi. And it looks like the rest of the JSIC there preparing to cross. So
Warrior in the red scarf.
We've got to spell out our acronyms. It's the Joint Congressional Committee on
Ladies and
Inaugural
gentlemen,
Ceremonies.
the Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Devi Harris, and Mr. Douglas Imhoff. The Vice President-elect of the United States, Kamala Devi Harris.
Vice President-elect Harris, who resigned her seat as a senator from California just yesterday, and today, very shortly, to be sworn in as Vice President.
So her office within the Capitol will move.
Yes.
From her senator's office to the vice president's office.
You know, it's really Richard Nixon that really transferred the location of the vice presidency, working towards the old executive office building.
And putting the locus of the vice president's office here at the Capitol. Because, of course, they are the tie-breaking vote. All right, so on our camera there on the right, we can see Representative Hoyer in the red scarf, member of the Joint Committee, the JSIC, Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies. CP-elect Harris hugging her children there.
Well, that's a moment there. Vice President.
VP
Vice
meeting
President.
VP.
Yes, Harris-elect. Vice President-elect Harris, yes. Yes, Vice President.
And notice the real furniture, folks. There's folding chairs out there, but that's a real chair and a real table. And on that table, I believe, are some of the sacred texts that are going to be used today. Representative Clyburn there having a moment with VP-elect Harris. Representative Clyburn there having a moment with VP-elect Harris.
Do I see snow?
I see snow flurries, it looks like, in this shot of Chuck Schumer.
Those are snow flurries. You notice it has gotten considerably darker.
Yeah, the wind did pick up.
Well, soon to be the 46th president. Joseph Biden, Dr.
Joe Biden,
making their way.
getting ready to cross through the crypt.
We'll wait for the cameras.
I can't stress enough that we have cameras in areas that you won't see on any other live stream or broadcast. These behind-the-scenes shots, this idea
The
that you can
Joint
see into the
Congressional
visitor
Committee on
center.
Inaugural Ceremonies, Staff Representative Alexandria Gordikan DeChico, accompanying the House Republican leader, the Honorable Kevin McCarthy. Staff Representative Bridget Brennan, accompanying House Majority Leader, the Honorable Steny Hoyer and Mrs. Yvette Lewis. Staff Representative Kate Knudsen, accompanying Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi and Mr. Paul Pelosi. Staff Representative Lindsey Kerr, accompanying the Honorable Amy Klobuchar and Mr. John Bessler. Staff Representative Stephanie Hager Mucko, accompanying Senate Majority Leader, the Honorable Mitch McConnell and the Honorable Elaine L. Chao. And Staff Representative Rochelle Graves Schroeder, accompanying the Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the Honorable Roy Blunt and Mrs. Abigail Blunt.
So those members of the JCEC, the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the official host of today's 59th inaugural ceremonies, we can see them there headed out onto the platform. The announcer just said the names.
Proud moment for the committee.
They've put all this together.
Not just September, well before that, the planning has gone on, and now let's be honest, this has been a different inauguration and hopefully something that we won't see again for a lot of different reasons, and they've really pulled this off handsomely. There goes Senator Blunt, the former Majority Whip of the House. He's been through a few of these ceremonies. Again, this is the second time he has chaired this committee.
Yes.
There's been 5 people to chair the committee twice, and Senator Blunt would be the latest. This is the second time he has chaired this committee.
He spoke of this ceremony today being an assurance for all people, our continued and unbroken commitment, continuity, stability, perseverance, democracy. This ceremony today being an assurance as we get ready to see the peaceful transfer of power, an event both commonplace and miraculous. President-elect Biden here and Dr. Jill Biden just passing through the crypt of the Capitol, soon to emerge onto the platform. We can see the back of the Obamas here on the platform. Biden here and Dr. Jill Biden just passing through the crypt of the Capitol, soon to emerge onto the platform. We can see the back of the Obamas. Cole and Ella, and it's snowing. Cole and Ella, VP Harris's children there. Ella is the young lady you see with the plaid coat with kind of an embellishment on the shoulders.
Ladies and gentlemen, accompanying the President-elect, the Staff Director of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Fitzhugh Elder IV, the Acting House Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Tim Blodgett, and the Acting Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, Jennifer Hemingway. Fitzhugh Elder IV, the Acting House Senate Sergeant-at-Arms.
You know, snow, not unheard of in Washington in January. But you know what? When they used to have these in March, snow was also not unheard of.
Not at all.
Until 1933, inaugurations happened in March, and it's pretty risky in the era before paved roads. Until 1933, inaugurations happened.
Well, our last inauguration, we had a little bit of rain. President Trump, on our last inauguration, of course, President Obama, I think it was about 25 degrees.
The weather's always an element.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President-elect of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. and Dr. Jill Biden. Elect of the United States.
This piece by the Marine Band Trio from Hail America. The Marine Band known as the President's Own. They play at the pleasure of the President and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And they played at every inauguration since Jefferson's. Biden's approaching their seats on the platform here. Greeting former VP Dan Quayle.
Look at his eyes.
The pride.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
That's a phrase that is well welcomed right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, please
Let's
be
enjoy the
seated.
ceremony. That's a phrase that is well welcomed right now.
Please welcome the Honorable Amy Klobuchar. Please welcome the
Vice
Honorable
President
Amy
Pence,
Klobuchar.
Mr. President-elect, Madam Vice President-elect, members of Congress and the judicial branch, former presidents and first ladies, vice presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does. Goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible. My friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt. Who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible. My friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we'd considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda till I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election, with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our Capitol at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment. People all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together. The Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium. Thank you. I'm pleased to call to the podium a longtime friend of the President-elect and his family, Father Leo O'Donovan, to lead us in an invocation. Please stand if you are able and remain standing for the national anthem and the pledge to our flag.
Gracious and merciful God, at this sacred time we come before you in need, indeed on our knees. But we come still more with hope and with our eyes raised anew to the vision of a more perfect union in our land, a union of all our citizens to promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all, those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today, it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good. with malice toward none, and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from the City of South Fulton, Georgia Fire and Rescue Department, President of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 3920, Fire Captain Andrea M. Hall, for the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What you are all about to be part of, America, is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome Jennifer Lopez to perform This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, accompanied by members of the President's Own United States Marine Band.
This land is your land. This land is my land. From
Well, that was great. The sun is shining, and Mr. President-elect, this is the first inauguration in the history of America where J-Lo was the warm-up act for Chief Justice Roberts. With that, it is now my distinct honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, John Roberts, to administer the presidential oath to the next President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
My fellow Americans, a moment we have all been waiting for. It is now my great privilege and high honor to be the first person to officially introduce the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, and my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has this challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious, democracy is fragile, and at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken, the oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country has taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history It'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it. My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this, bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make health care secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen. It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you've placed in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. And if you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand. There are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. That's what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, we all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all of those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic, those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. We'll honor them by becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with the sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch, but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Garth Brooks to perform Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. If I can ask you to sing this last verse with me, not just the people here, but the people at home, at work, as one, united. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Hard not to be reminded of President Obama's singing that same song at the Mother Emanuel Church. A song that in our culture is as close to both poetry and prayer as you could possibly come. And we're going to finish with those two things. Let me introduce Amanda Gorman, our nation's first ever National Poet Laureate.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, in the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gaze not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, How could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert. How could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Thank you, Amanda Gorman. Now for our benediction, I'm pleased to introduce Reverend Dr. Sylvester Beeman, the pastor of the Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Wilmington, Delaware, a friend of President Biden for 30 years.